Welcome back, viewers, and now I am joined by our special guest on News Review, the popular Nyang Njie, economist and political pundit. Welcome to the Fatu Network News Review, Mr. Njie.
Good evening, viewers. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you very much for coming. You follow in the news from one story to the other, from one headline to the other. As disturbing as they come, how would you describe the current situation of this country?
It depends what situation are you talking about, the economic situation?
Political situation, let's begin with.
Well, I think the political realignment of this country is still ongoing, and I don't know how and where the pendulum is going to swing because they're mushrooming, new parties mushrooming coming out. The old parties are also getting part of their dominion, their base being shaved off by NPP, for example. So I don't know, but I think there is a lot of, I call it political pollution, in the sense that there is so much noise and less action. What the Gambian, generally what the Gambian is looking for is politics of issues, the bread and butter. How are these crop of politicians going to get us out of what we are? What we lack in this country are politicians/statesmen. What we have in this country mostly are pure politicians. Pure politicians are nothing but people who preserve themselves first and foremost, then think of the people. What we need to make the fortunes of this country change is to have politicians who are selfless and put country before ambition and country before personal political objectives.
You know, you talked about the thing about politics of ideas, and when the coalition came in 2016, one of the things that they sold to the Gambians was that they were going to have a security sector reform. Now I know security has increasingly become a concern for many Gambians, especially the fact that a lot of them think the SSR has failed, and then there's just too much going on in this country. And even with that, sometimes, I know Yahya Jammeh is not your cup of tea, but sometimes you hear people say, well, he did so many bad things, but then he never compromised the security of this country. What do you think about that?
Well, Yahya Jammeh not compromising the security of this country was for his personal self-preservation, not for you and me. We need to get that right. This transitional government has completely failed. Why did it fail? What brought them together was smaller than what can keep them together. What does that mean? They came together for one purpose and one purpose only, to boot out Yahya Jammeh. But there was no sincerity in transforming this country, and it has shown thereafter. The Jammeh Commission has failed woefully. We all know that. The draft constitution has been butchered and killed by the very champion who should have championed the draft constitution, because that's what he sold to the Gambian. After the elections, when we assume office, or when because I want the responsibility to be solely and squarely put on the president, he is the one responsible for the mess this country finds itself, and truth be told, it has to be told as is. What does that mean? The president was supposed to be an arbiter, a referee, make sure that the ground is level, the playing field is good, put the institutional structures in place, put reparations and other things in place, call for an election, eject himself out of the political process, and allow the country to move on. He has hijacked Gambia. He has strangulated Gambia, and he is responsible, and history will not be kind to him, because we had a unique golden opportunity to transform this country through its institution and making sure what happened in the past will never repeat itself. But he looked at his personal ambition over our collective good, and that's why I cannot see him as a statesman. A statesman will put country before self, and everything that this president has done is to advance his personal interest over our collective good.
And just to get back quickly to the issue of the draft constitution, you know, a lot of people will tell you it was the president who actually masterminded the rejection of this draft. Now, only for them to go back and bring someone to be a mediator between, let's say, him and the rest of the political parties. How would you describe that?
Well, the Wolofs will say, "Munuloma rey beparenga jalema," and that's exactly what the president did to the Gambian. This is the biggest insult we have had, and I will tell you why. The president is the champion of the transitional agenda or the transitional program. This document that went to the parliament was his. But we all know, and Stevie Wonder the blind man knows of the political machination that went under the table to kill this draft. We have seen how people were jubilating after the demise of the draft. We have seen how much money the Gambian has spent to make sure we have a viable draft. But guess what? Personal ambition overrode our collective good. What's the personal ambition? How to preserve himself and how to perpetuate himself in office. And that's why I am saying he may get what he wants short term, but the best window of opportunity he has ever had, he has lost it, and history will not be kind to him. So now he will make a choice. My ambition over my legacy, and his legacy will be very sully.
So how about the rest of the other politicians? Because a lot of Gambians argued that if this guy could mastermind the rejection of this draft constitution and then imports a mediator to come here for a dialogue, and then all of a sudden you guys are packed and then shipped to Nigeria to hold dialogue with this guy again. Some people said, if you stood on your grounds and you shared your position and you were serious about it, you wouldn't first of all leave for a trip for Nigeria. What's your position?
Not only the trip to Nigeria, the trip to Nigeria was a culmination of meetings that happened prior. The injection of Goodluck Jonathan was an insult to the Gambian. Why? We have prominent apolitical Gambians in and outside of this country who can negotiate if these were bona fide negotiations for what is good for the greater good of Gambians. You see, we need to start saying that we need Gambian solutions for Gambian problems. Gone are the days, or gone should be the days, where Gambians will bring outsiders to fix things that outsiders don't know, the social nuances, the political nuances that make up these problems. But I think our politicians need to take a somber reflection of themselves and ask themselves, are we positioning ourselves for relevance? Because two things happen. There were parties that went to Nigeria because it was a plus for them. What does that mean? I am new, no political base or trying to build a political base. So having a platform like meeting Jonathan boosts my political capital and equity. But some other parties, honestly, they eroded their political capital and equity by allowing themselves or their parties to be put in something that was a collision course.
Which parties would be those?
Well, there were big parties. I mean, we need not name names, but there were big parties. I mean, if they were strategically positioned, some of the things that happened should not have happened because they are the losers in that dispensation. Why? They are big. The smaller parties, yes, they gain visibility. Plus, it's adding to their political capital.
He came, the talks failed. They went over there, the talks failed. He came back again, and then the talks failed. One person, though, who has maintained his position that they can bring back the draft untouched, unedited, not doctored, is the leader of the United Democratic Party. And still, some Gambians are coming at him, saying, you are being selfish because all the other political parties have agreed to this, except you. Do you think Gambians are being fair to him? Because he stood his ground and said, this is my position from the beginning, and it remains that way.
I don't know whether Gambians are being fair to him or not, but what I know for a fact, and this is my conviction and belief, that we should be principled. I cannot compromise on principle. The President of the Republic, in a nutshell, has shown Gambian the biggest disregard. What is that disregard? What I want is what I want, and what I want or the highway. So Gambians must also be steadfast to show him that you are nothing but a mere servant of the people. Therefore, it's our way or the highway. For me, that's the matter of principle, and no one should negotiate. I mean, I've heard even some close friends of mine say, look, let's look at the bigger picture. Give him what he wants. He may not even be here the next term. I said, it has nothing to do with the next term. It has everything to do with a servant of the people putting his personal interest over the people who put him in office. And that the president will pay, and he will pay in posterity, because history will judge him and judge him in a way that's very adverse, because he put his personal interest over the collective good, considering the 22 odd years that we went through brutality and all kinds of repression. He should have been the first Gambian to say, it's not about me, it's not about me getting re-elected. It's about this country making a U-turn for a better, so that a group of Gambians that I consider to be the arrested development generation. These were Gambians who were 18, 19 when Jammeh took off, spent 22 years of their productive life not doing much, will have an opportunity to make something of their tail end in terms of their productive life, and also give Gambia to the next generation of Gambia better than we found after Yahya Jammeh.
And I think that very much sums up the political situation that we have now. Let's talk about the economy, because this is also an area that you are very good in. Now, we know that generally, the world has been rocked by this coronavirus pandemic. And we've seen in Gambia, we depend so much on debts and all of that. What is the economic outlook of this country right now?
Well, the economic outlook of this country is not too promising. Why? Fiscal management of this economy has been very reckless. What is fiscal management? We have been spending more than we generate in taxes. It's a shame that this government of the Gambia has bloated the Gambia Local Fund, that's the GLF. If you look at the Nyomi Hakalang Road, it's 100% funded by Gambian taxpayers. We cannot afford it, and the timing. You see, two things. Expansion must come with growth. When the economy is growing, you can expand because you can afford to. But we are expanding in a contracting economy. These two things, it's a contradiction. You cannot be spending more when your inflows, what you're receiving, is dwindling. So we've made commitment on the Nyomi Hakalang Road. We continue commitments on the Banjul Road. And this is bloating our fiscal expenditure, and this is not looking good for the Gambia. But why is this happening? Political expediency. When you have an exchequer, a Ministry of Finance, who happens to sway and listen more to political needs of people who want to be re-elected, basically you turn the budget into a campaign coffer. And when you turn the budget into a campaign coffer, the president benefits, but at the expense of society and overall at the expense of the macroeconomic environment. And that's why I say that the fiscal management of this country has been reckless. Reckless in the sense that some of the expenditures made over the past 2-3 years could have been deferred considering the economic environment. Now we're talking about resilience, that the economy is resilient. But before we talk about resilience, we need to have a strategic road to recovery program, that this is what the Gambia is going to do to get out of the mess we find ourselves due to COVID.
The post-pandemic recovery.
There are two things going on here. COVID, a natural phenomenon that slowed down the Gambian economy. Reckless spending without frugality has put this economy in disrepute. I can safely tell you that tourism will take at least another 1.5 years to rebound to where it was pre-COVID, number one. We have seen that our agricultural output is not as promising as it used to be. We have seen trade moving from Gambia to Senegal, especially for transshipment to Mali. So the prospects of the Gambian economy are doom and gloom until and unless we decide to do two things. One is to pass a legislation called debt ceiling legislation. This debt ceiling legislation will tie the hands of the executive, including the Ministry of Finance, from bloating our budgets, because we need discipline, and discipline is what we lack. So macroeconomic management of this country is costing all of us, because inflation has kicked in, the value of your income has been discounted, commodity pricing are going up, and another reason commodity prices are going up is the inefficiency of our port system. Our port system, as is today, vessels come in, the turnaround time for a vessel to discharge and move takes forever. And these are additional costs that the port will charge to an importer. And importers are not emotional, so they will pass on this cost to you and me. Cement is a case in point. What's been happening, the skyrocketing prices, it's not only about a weak dollar, but it's the transaction cost of importing and getting the cement out of the port all the way to the end user. All these additional costs will be added on to the end user. And this is what Gambians are facing today.
Now let's talk about executive and money. Because besides the fact that a lot of people think the draft budget was ridiculously bloated with unnecessary stuff, one of the things that shocked the entire Gambia was when Parliament, the National Assembly of this country, representing the people, approved a budget for the health officials, the health minister, and all of that. What's your response to that?
See, I think we, the people, must take responsibility. We voted people in office. Did we vote the right people in office? My answer is no. So the outcome, the end game, is what we are getting. Dismal and lackluster performance at the expense of the tax-paying Gambian. So what do we need to do? Lesson learned. When you spill milk, you cannot pick it. The only thing you can do is clean it. So cleaning it is fixing the problem. Fixing the problem starts with getting representatives who will go there, understand issues, understand development, and understand the aspiration of the Gambians so that what we want, you and I, can be reflected by them through legislation. And that's what we lack, and that's why what we are seeing in this country, we are seeing. From them giving monies to themselves, from them giving monies for health, look at the COVID funds. We don't know yet. We haven't seen a proper report about how COVID funds were spent. Right. And it's disheartening. We can do better, and we deserve better. And you know what? A country with a meager resources must stretch the little monies they have rather than spending it the way it's being spent.
And of course, you've said that our agriculture sector is underperforming, but we know that the Gambia government is investing a lot in agriculture. Actually, they spent 3 million Gambian dollars to buy donkeys and, and whatnot.
Well, unfortunately, the government of the Gambia is not spending much on agriculture. I will tell you why. You see, you put your money where your mouth is. Talk is cheap. Most of the funds with the Department of Agriculture are loans, grant, and aid from the donor community, IFAD, World Bank, Badia, you name it. The government of the Gambia need to put 3 places and put monies in there: agriculture, health, and education. Why? You have a young demography, and these people need to be equipped with skill, need to be healthy so that they can be productive when the time comes. We have failed in doing that. And if you look at our military, if you look at our intelligence, if you look at our security services, relative to the size of the population, the pie is highly distributed there. And the office of the president, might I add. So we need to do something to change this. What Gambia needs is a disruptor, a leader like Magufuli, who will come. Know that it's not going to be easy, but make sure we make a change and change towards having a better country. Business as usual is where we are, minus killings and arrests that Yahya Jammeh used to do. And also during Yahya Jammeh's days, corruption was more centralized. Today, corruption is so decentralized, free for all, at the expense of the tax-paying population.
Now, a report you've done on the issue of fishmeal factories in the Gambia, an extensive report that you've done. And recently we have seen another tragedy that happened because of these fishmeal factories. When you did that explosive report, what do you think have changed since after that?
Nothing has changed but more anger from the people. You see, a country needs what you call an equitable social contract. An equitable social contract gives people, 1, access to opportunity, equal protection under the law, and also to make sure that they have social protection, i.e. their environment. But in Gambia, people believe peace is just the absence of war. Because we are not at war doesn't mean we are at peace. And Gunjur, Katong, and Sanyang are ticking time bombs. And what we saw a few weeks ago should be a good reminder to our government that all is not well in the South Gambia coast. And why is all not well? If you look at South Gambia from Katong to Gunjur, most of the women living there have been in the narco/horticulture business, paying tuition for their kids, taking their kids to hospitals, and making sure that they help in their household in terms of adding to the economic buoyancy of their households. What has happened? Their lands are being confiscated. What has happened? The little fish they used to get and make dry bonga and others is no longer happening because the Chinese are buying it. Should I blame the Chinese? My answer is no. Because in life, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. The government of the Gambia, the public officials serving the Gambia, has sold short the Gambian by making sure that the Chinese come to Gambia and exploit our marine resources unabated. That is wrong, and it's an atrocious, foul, something that this government must try and stop. And stopping it starts with fixing the Department of Fisheries.
Do you think there is any intention to address the issue of these fish meal factories in the country?
Well, there is what you call conscience. There's what you call courage of conviction. The public servants, starting with the Minister of Fisheries, should not wait for the public outcry to fix it. Why? 1 ton of finished fish meal takes in 4 tons of raw fish. The rate of exploitation will soon get Gambia to a depletion stage. That's one. The poor man in Gambia relies on kobo/bonga or yaboy for their source of protein because they cannot afford even chicken legs. Today, they are competing with the Chinese fish meals. And not only that, the Chinese fish meal own boats. These boats are now coming into our 9 nautical mile, which is an exclusive no-fish zone for fishing trawlers. And guess what? The artisanal fishermen who were fishing there so you and I can buy fish no longer have fish. Their lives are in danger because they've been doused with petrol. Their nets are being cut, and you are buying fish at an exorbitant price. So society is losing no matter what. And any sensible government with conviction and conscience will know that fish meal factories are not good for our environment, are not good for our socio-economic configuration, i.e. the society and households being able to buy fish. Today you go to Tanje, you are poor, you cannot get fish.
And it's tragic that a young life was lost in Sanyang few weeks ago. And even with that, the Chinese ambassador in Gambia issued a statement condemning the attack on the Chinese fish meal factory in Sanyang. And some Gambians took offense by the fact that this guy was out there with everything that is happening in the coast. These people are saying, you are affecting our livelihoods. You are affecting where we earn. You are affecting where we get our meals from. Someone died, and yet still you stand there trying to condemn us. And I saw a comment on social media where someone said, this is the part where the foreign minister should sit him down and have a dialogue. What do you think?
Not a dialogue, but a reprimand. He needs to be reprimanded. Why? You see, I don't blame the Chinese ambassador. You get away with murder if you're allowed to get away with murder. That's one. A beggar has no choice. And this is the mentality we need to stop. Gambia as a nation have turned ourselves to a beggar nation. So basically, kila joh mola mom. And this is the problem this government finds itself with the Chinese authorities. We rely on them for aid. But what the Chinese authority or ambassador has done needs a rebuke from the foreign minister, number one. Number two, I think it was an insult to our plight as Gambians and what we are going through. In China, you cannot cut a tree. It's illegal. Yet still, they're flying, going all around the world, buying trees, cutting down other people's forests. But I don't blame the Chinese. I blame us. When will Gambia have leaders who are not transactional, have leaders who have vision, think of country, and think of instilling pride and dignity to our Gambianness? Today, our Gambianness has been bruised because we have cheap leaders who think of what they want rather than what is good for us. A people without dignity are people not worth living. And we have been brought down to a level where our dignity has been bruised by few at the expense of all.
With all of these things happening, how does this affect, how does it impact our economy? Because recently we've had the drug issue, still not addressed. We don't know what's happening. How does this impact the economy? Because we have investors sitting out there saying, oh, okay, that's a drug country or something of that sort. It could be good, it could be bad. Oh, that's a drug country. Okay, then let's go in and also try our chance. Or that's a country that's not safe, so I'm not going there to invest. How does this impact the economy of the country?
You see, justice must be swift if it's to be seen as working. When the youths of Sanyang burned the police station, in less than a week, people were arraigned in court. This is not the first drug bust over the past 36 to 48 months at the port. And we're yet to see anything tangible or meaningful come out of it, especially this last bust of over a ton of cocaine. It is scary and it's a shame. So now, the image of this country has been put in disrepute. How? Gambia is not a narco state, but it is fast becoming or being seen as a narco state. What does that mean? It's a soft target for cartels. They think they can come here, do business because they will have protection, or people will turn a blind eye and allow them to do what they want to do. And that is not good for our economy because it means you will have social unrest. Because imagine 2-3 cartels wanting to use Gambia, there will be tough wars.
Right.
People will be fighting for territory. And at the end, when 2 elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. And that's the average Gambian. That's one. The residual value of the cocaine that stays here will also have an adverse social impact on society. So government must be very mindful to have a zero tolerance on such a thing. And I think our government need to do better, and silence is a form of consent. And we haven't seen them come outright, not only to denounce, but put meaningful measures to get this thing sorted. If you look at the courts, how can you try someone in absentia, number one? They say they don't know where he is, and now people are saying if the government doesn't come, the judge must drop the case. What a shame when we're talking about tons, millions of dollars. Are we serious? Do we take our Gambianness and our country seriously? And it's all about leadership. Leadership is by example, and the example is not good as it is.
Now let's talk about corruption, the cancer of African nations. And I think Gambia is now tapping into the World Bank to help them fight corruption. What do you make of this headline? Government seeks World Bank's help to fight corruption. Why do we have to seek help from the World Bank
Balanga
to fight
sangu
corruption?
set. Balanga ote sangu. Dafa wara feka nga set. You want help. Ask yourself. You see, we have to be introspective. We have to look at self and let us be honest with each other. This is playing with the gallery. This is good for a headline. But Gambians are not stupid. We know that in Gambia, our procurement rules are so poor. We have seen at the IEC, we have seen the Banjul Road, we have seen the Nyomi Hakalang, and many others, to name a few. What is the problem? The problem is we Gambians, collectively, both the people in the public sector and the private sector, are not ready to change. Why? We need to deconstruct our social construct. Njegi Guru is legalized in the Gambian mindset. Njegi attire is legalized in the Gambian mindset to the point any checkpoint you stop, the police officer will ask. And whether it's a minister or a PS or a high ranking, they expect something in return too. So it's just not the police officer or the rank and file on the bottom. The fish rots from the top. And we need to accept that if we want to change this country. We don't need the World Bank to help us fight corruption. We need serious attempts with our leadership to say we have zero tolerance, starting with ourselves. You have to self-regulate before you call a regulator to regulate you, and that's what is lacking in our country.
Perhaps a case that I think Gambians have quickly forgotten is the Dr. Banja case at the Ministry of Fisheries and Water Resources. Yeah. It has gone dead. Nobody has heard anything from that. Investigations were being done by the police, and the last update they gave, and that was it. What did you expect government to do with that kind of situation?
That is just one out of many. Since I've known myself, I'm yet to see this government try someone for corruption, even though even the blind people in this country know that corruption is rife and it's a way of life. But the government is not serious about it, because when you're serious about it, you make examples. But why and how is it not possible for government to make examples? Because he who is without sin must cast the first stone. So you cannot punish him when you yourself may be a culprit. So therefore, we need leaders who are busters, and they're going to come and disrupt this corruption culture that we have in this country.
And now, out of nowhere, it came out and said, oh, someone took 15 million from us. Just like that. What's your analysis of this, and what are the possibilities?
Well, there's two sides to a story. NAWEC, as a depositor into any bank in the country, have the right to put monies in there. Now is the responsibility and duty of care of the bank to have safe systems and security measures to make sure that those accounts that are with their banks having deposits of corporates and private individuals are safe. So if the monies have been gotten not on NAWEC's permission, but through using the vulnerabilities of the bank financial system, then the responsibility falls with the bank. If someone were to steal a checkbook from the bank, from NAWEC, or happen to have the passwords and transfer monies, then that's NAWEC's problem. And I don't know of these two what have happened. So all I can say is it's time for the Central Bank of the Gambia to do more banking supervision and see whether the security standards and softwares being used by the banks are in conformity with global standards to fight hacking. If that's the case, we are safe. If not, we have a problem. But hacking dollars is very difficult because it's lump sum. Unless you want to hack it, make a transfer within the bank in dollars and ship it somewhere. So I don't know what has happened, but I'm still waiting to see what has really gone wrong.
We don't really know, but it seems they are already investigating, and reports are out there that one person has been arrested. I cannot independently verify this, and then some Gambians are just saying, well, you're just using him as a scapegoat, and
well, like I said, there's two sides to it. Either an in-house within NAWEC who helped facilitated this, or a rogue hacker who realized the vulnerabilities of our banking system, went dark in the dark internet, and just did whatever that they've done. So that's why the central bank must also be actively involved and be vigilant, because banking supervision is not only about making sure that the deposit ratio of banks are fine, but making sure that the systems are not vulnerable to what we see in the global space, especially in the dark internet.
Right. Technology has really advanced, and I think Gambia still needs to catch up. We've seen recently when we had 2 major internet outages of this country. For someone who's an economist, knowing that this economy is digitally driven, what was your reaction to that?
You see, in any country, the Minister of Telecom should have been called to the parliament or be sacked by the government for having 2 intermittent interruptions in less than 45 days. Why? Any country in this world today relies on the internet for service, trade, and many other things, especially financial intermediation. So when the internet was out, anyone who wanted to travel cannot travel because a ticket can't be issued to you. You have an ATM card, you cannot use your ATM to pay for a service, because everything is on the internet. But 2 things have happened. In the Gambia, the Minister of Telecommunication and Communication, whatever it's called, they have focused on being a spin doctor for the government rather than working and focusing more on the telco side of it, because it's the telco side of it that is more important. The world is moving to a digitally driven economy, and the investment we have done as a country is so much, and we are the only country in the world without an adequate backup or redundancy plan as it relates to internet. A few days ago, the Gamtel fiber went down less than a week ago. Why? Because they're routing through Senegal. I don't know whether their ACE cable is up or not. But what needs to happen, this country needs to take internet connectivity seriously by making sure that prices are affordable, by making sure quality of service is high. And the only way that can happen is for the government to impose through PURA what you call a service level agreement, meaning when there is a downtime, you pay people for having a downtime. And you're not paying them for what they're paying you, but you pay them for damages caused to their businesses. That way, companies will make sure they have an adequate, viable redundancy or backup plans.
Sometimes we tend to blame the service providers, the GSM companies, forgetting that there is a regulatory body, which is PURA. What do you make of PURA's responsibility? Because a lot of Gambians say that they are regulating everything, but the GSM companies and the things they are supposed to regulate. We've seen recently when they came out to say, okay, we are going to keep an eye on radio stations. When you use language that you're not supposed to use, we are going to, apply some measures on you. What do you think of them as a regulatory body?
You see, regulation is good, but it has a scope. PURA has transformed itself into a supra-regulatory agency. Gas, they're involved. Petroleum filling stations, petrol stations, they're involved. Radio stations, they're involved. Water, they're involved. Electricity, they're involved. Telecommunication, they're involved. It's all well and good, but do they have the requisite skill set and toolkit to make sure these things happen? I think the answer is no. So where should their focus be? The telecommunication, which forms a big aspect of the Gambian life, both in terms of revenue and need for services. Today, the quality of service in the telcos are bad, the call drop rates are high, the quality of internet service provision is bad, no backup or redundancy plans that are adequate, and yet still you're going after other people, i.e. the people in the petrol business, the people in the gas business, that's butane gas, the bottled gas. So it's time PURA takes a focus and relook and make sure they go back to what PURA was supposed to do in its inception. And that way society will benefit from PURA. But if PURA is looking at regulatory revenue, they will like to broaden their scope, meaning whoever they're giving a license, you pay. So they will even want to give a license to the bonga seller. And that's where we're heading, because they're expanding their scope and they're expanding their regulatory footprint day in, day out, and that's not good for the country.
And finally, before I let you go, something that every Gambian, the average one, the rich ones, everyone is concerned about: the skyrocketing of items, the prices of items in the market. Ridiculous. What's happening as far as economics is concerned? What is this all about?
Simple. When you have an inefficient market, the outcome is you don't have price stability. When you don't have price stability, you have prices moving up. So two things have happened here, and we need to understand it. One, our currency. If we don't work, our currency is going to be weak. What I mean if we don't work, if we don't produce to sell outside, vis-a-vis the dollar or pound, we're going to have a weak currency. If you have a weak currency, you need more of your currency to buy one of something. Right. You look at the dollar, where it is today and where it was 14, 15 years ago. It's not the same. Why? Because our exports are dwindling, making our currency weaker, because we don't have, if you look at our balance of trade statistic, import minus export, we are on the negative side. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is corruption and infrastructure. Corruption adds a layer on the price. When you bring a container to the port, you will not only pay taxes, but you have to put money in people's pockets, from security to other kinds of people. And not only there, the checkpoints on the roads. So these all adds up to the prices, because no merchant, no importer is so they're God-fearing, but they're just not that nice to say, the additional cost I have incurred, I'm going to bear it on behalf of Gambians. No, they will pass on their last cost and put a factor, which is their margin, on top of it to sell. So what needs to change? Our port system needs a serious look, because the turnaround time at our port is not acceptable and is not in conformity with regional standards, the time it takes to clear a container. So the competitive nature of our country has been lost, and this affects our prices. So what you are seeing here today, let's say I'm a supermarket. I order a whole container of perishable items. What should have taken 4 weeks, I ended up getting it in 8 weeks. I have lost shelf life. So maybe I have lost 5 or 10% of my container just because of the time lapse. They will expire before I sell them.
Right.
So I factor that loss into the 80% that I'm going to sell. And when I factor it into the 80%, it becomes a price hike. And that price hike is due to inefficiency in the market. And the inefficiency is from corruption to bad infrastructure, i.e. port, and these checkpoints on the road, you name it. So the government need to take a critical look. If not, the life of the Gambian is going to be affected in terms of them having purchasing power. Today, none of us have purchasing power. You are poorer today than in 2016, and most likely you'll be poorer in 2022 than even 2021.
Right, and now finally, before I let you go, elections year. 2021, everyone is heading to the polls to decide if they want the status quo to remain, if they want it to change, or if we have, whatever it is. And now the IEC has come out to say that voter registration is going to begin very soon. What do you have to say to the Gambian people?
See, every people get the government they deserve. Politics in Gambia has become a game of prostitution. An educated politician without conviction and conscience is as good as an animal. We have seen the transfer window open, like players moving from one team to another in the Premier League and other leagues. That's what's happening in our political space, all for a pickup truck, little cash, and relevance. So, what the Gambian voter need to ask themselves, why did we put Yaya Jammeh out of office? Well, the first thing is we want to own ourselves. That's the first thing we will say. The second thing we will say is we want to strengthen our institutions. The third thing we'll say, we want to curb the excesses that happen in this country in terms of people maiming people physically and the financial and economic gangsters that looted this country. Now, if you put a stock take of all of this, did we achieve this under this administration? The answer is no. Since we didn't achieve them, is this government fit for purpose based on what Gambians wanted? The answer is no. Should we vote them back in office? Well, that's up to Gambians. But if we are worth our salt, we have dignity and pride in our citizenship, we will not allow any politician, be it the president or an aspiring politician, to take us for a ride. Gone should be those days. But Gambians in ñoo wara am fayda sen bopa hamne nahate bi dafa passé suñ boti dañ ubeku. Why poverty has become an instrument of repression in our political space.
I want us to just press it there for a little bit. This is where the issue comes, because you will look at the policy of a political party and said, okay, this sits well with me and I am going to vote. But to that person out there who is hungry and just looking for a bag of rice, he doesn't care. He just wants a bag of rice and he will give you your vote.
But it's a shame that the politicians don't have the moral fortitude to stop using poverty as an instrument of repression. We saw that in Yamina during the by-election. We have seen monies given to Gambia by the World Bank to help people who are on the fringes of poverty. And now these funds have been used to help people, but with a political cover. And that is a shame, and that is something that this government must stop, because this country is ours, and we should not prostitute our people, and we should not denigrate our people. These citizens find themselves to be unfortunate to be on the bottom totem pole of this country, but they should be made dignified people, and they deserve a dignified livelihood. And politics should not be repressive. When I say repressive, you should not induce people. A politician, worth his or her salt, must do something to uplift the lives of the people. And Joe Biden said one thing: do not get into public service to better yourself. You should get into public service to better your community and your country at large. Therefore, that means politicians must be selfless. But the crop of politicians we are seeing are selfish people who put self before the collective good.
Thank you very much, Mr. Njie, for coming through to the FATU Network News Review. That was a very interesting discussion. Thank you very much for coming.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go for a break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. And now the Gambia Transport Union recently concluded a nationwide tour, and now they've called a press conference to brief the media on their findings. Mati Senghor tells us more.
Transport Union, in a press briefing earlier today, showed reports after completing a nationwide tour. Recommendations were put up for the government to intervene.